Not long after we passed the state capital, Baton Rouge, the flatlands slowly gave way to rolling hills, and we came to the quaint antebellum town of St. Francisville, dotted with plantations worked by slaves 100 years earlier. We left the main highway for a narrow, winding, rutted road that snaked through 22 miles of some of the most rugged and forbidding terrain in the state. A wilderness of lush foliage, swamps, and deep ravines. Some of the shrubbery lining the road was deceptive. It was the tops of tall trees rooted in the bottom of an abyss far below. The dead-end road had a singular purpose: to deliver human cargo to the front gate of the Louisiana State Penitentiary. About 60 miles northwest of Baton Rouge, the maximum security prison sprawls on an 18,000-acre enclave surrounded on 3 sides by the muddy Mississippi River. The rugged Tunica Hills, replete with snake-infested woods and deep gorges, border the prison on the remaining side, completing a formidable natural barrier that makes escape extremely difficult and isolates the prison, which is accessible only by boat, plane, or this one treacherous road. The prison has 20 miles of levees, built long ago by inmates, many of whom died from the grueling labor. The levees don't always protect the prison when the Mississippi becomes swollen from melting snow and ice up north each spring. After miles of hairpin turns and breathtaking scenery, a massive, dull gray, 2-story building crouching against a bluff rose out of nowhere. Its sudden appearance jolted me like a crack of lightning. The prison loomed ominously against the skies, an image of awesome power. Dread replaced shock as we grew nearer and the cast-iron front gate came into view. To the right of the gate stood a wooden guard tower that looked like an outhouse on stilts. Others were scattered nearby. My stomach clenched when I saw the colored guards. These were the infamous khakibacks, whose rumored brutality was the stuff of legend. They were trusty prisoners, armed with rifles and pistols, vested with the power to kill. We drove through the front gate and parked. The deputies took me down a long walkway and into the office of the security captain for the reception center. I stood silently, cuffed and chained, hand and foot, dreading whatever would come next. "Well, Captain, we brought you another boy," one deputy said, handing over some paperwork and removing my shackles. The other deputy set down a sack of belongings I'd brought from the local jail. "What'd he do?" Captain asked. "Murdered a white woman." "Okay, we'll take him off your hands." I knew from the jail grapevine that Negroes convicted of raping or killing a white person typically got a brutal ass whipping by Angola's white guards and their khakibacks to teach them their place. So when a white guard and his 2 trustees came to the captain's office to take me away, I was terrified. But I was spared the whipping, as I later learned, because I was going to death row. To get there, we passed through several gates and doors unlocked for us by khakibacks. After the final door, we entered a narrow, steel and concrete netherworld. At the free man's instruction, the khakiback worked a crank that opened one of the cells. "Okay, Rideau, go down to number 9. That's your cell," the free man said. Cell 9 was 6 feet wide by 8 feet deep, smaller than my cell at the Calcasieu Parish Jail. It contained a white ceramic face bowl, a lidless ceramic toilet, a a metal table and bench affixed to the wall, and a narrow metal bunk, its hardness barely relieved by a 1-inch thick cotton batting mattress made at the prison factory. An electrical wire threaded its way into my cell from the hallway, connecting to a bare bulb that lightened or darkened my space as I screwed it in or out. The cinder block walls of my cell were white on the upper half, gray on the lower. The front of the cell consisted of bars facing a 10-foot wide hall that ran the length of the tier. On the far side of the hall, there was a wall of windows that looked out onto a small grassy area directly in front of us. Then the prison fence, beyond which lay the bluff. Occasionally, I saw a cow or two, or an armed khaki-back walking outside the fence. Most of the prisoners would hang a sheet or blanket across the front of their cell to spend their day free from the eyes of passers-by in the hall, shutting off the view outside the windows. The guards respected the crude attempts at privacy. When they needed to talk with a prisoner, they would stand in front of his cell and ask the occupant to move the curtain aside. There were few avenues of relief from the boredom and idleness of life in a tiny cage. We spent every minute of every day in our cells, except twice a week when we were permitted out one at a time for 15 minutes to shower at the head of the tier near the entrance. In those precious minutes, men would take a quick shower and rush down the road to talk to other prisoners. If the need to talk or conduct business was urgent, the shower was skipped. The guards didn't care how you spent your 15 minutes. My mother, who struggled to write letters with only a 5th grade education, was my only correspondent. Except for her occasional visits and notes, I was completely cut off from the outside world. Never had I felt so lonely. Never had life seemed so futile. We were allowed to have a small electric radio and a small electric fan to combat the stifling summer heat in the cells. With the 2-story cinder block building at our backs and a bluff looming up in front of us blocking any possible southern breeze, death row was an inferno from May to September. During the winter, icy north winds scooped up dampness from the Mississippi River and dumped bone-chilling cold into the cells. That's when a curtain across the front of the cell proved its worth, by keeping the air at bay. Our other trick for keeping warm was putting a layer of newspaper over or between the thin blankets on our steel bunks. The radio and fan and tobacco were luxuries. The prison provided food, toothpaste, toothbrush, and toilet paper in restricted quantities. Everything else, deodorant, soap, hair cream, canned meat, and tuna, we had to purchase out of whatever small funds we received or could muster. My mother would send a couple of dollars regularly so that I could buy bugler tobacco, my only indulgence. I tried to quit smoking several times to eliminate the expense, but failed. I needed the fleeting relief of a cigarette. On death row, we had to build our day-to-day existence in a vacuum. The existence was senseless. We were just waiting to die. For a long time, indeed, I didn't care whether I lived or died. I had little reason to live.